Thanks very much, Orla. Now, I've got the dud slot, I reckon, just before the coffee. So if you can just bear with me and stay awake, I'll be very, very brief and succinct as much as possible. I started my career in a corporate world, and I worked for 12 years corporately before I decided to take the leap into setting up something myself. So I have seen both sides of the fence. I've worked for companies where there is a huge and almost limitless amount of money to be spent on campaigns, and I've also worked on the other side where you are starting something from absolute scratch and you have nothing and you really need to do it very well. The challenge for me was that, having been on the wealthy side of the fence, I didn't want to do the bad things. I didn't want to do the cheap and cheerful. I didn't want to do press advertising. I didn't want to create a dud TV ad that I really couldn't, hand on heart, feel very proud of. So I had to think very, very smartly about any money that I could find, how I could spend it. So what I want to share with you is really how you can be, I'm going to speak to you on punching above your weight. There's no one in this room with a business that doesn't punch above their weight already. As Irish people, it's what we do very, very well. We can trade internationally at a level and compete with people who are way beyond us, and yet somehow in our spirit we feel okay about doing it. We'll go into battle, and maybe we're not so afraid of failure. I think maybe that's possibly what it is. I've recently moved to the UK and I'm dealing with some business people every day, and they're afraid, whereas I never sense that in Ireland. I never feel that if people are going to try something, the chances are it might work, it might not, but we're going to give it a really good shot. So let me share with you some of the things that I've come across. Let me see if I get this right. Okay, what are the rules? Lightweight boxer walks into a ring, he doesn't really know who he's up against. If a heavyweight comes against him, he's going to be floored. If we believed that, we wouldn't be here today. So, what can I share with you? Samsung, that ad, wow, how creative, how interesting, how clever. They spent 30 million on that association. They had a very, very tight contract around the agreement, but they made it feel entrepreneurial. So from a consumer point of view, they made it feel like it was different and new and fresh. That's a very clever thing that a brand can do, and often when you don't have a lot of money, it's what you have to do. You have to feel different. So what I would encourage us all to think about is, how can we always, even when we're in the lead position, behave like we are the underdog. Ellen spoke about taking her shot with the Samsung. She actually owned an iPhone, and she spent half a day training on how to use a Samsung that day. But it felt really fresh. It felt like, wow, God, that just happened, that moment. When I worked for the Coca-Cola company, Red Bull launched in Ireland. They drove us crazy. Every event we turned up, they were there. We had barricading outside. We owned the property inside, whether it was a music gig, a sporting event. They were sampling outside, giving free Red Bull to our market. It drove us crazy, but it taught me a very valuable lesson. You don't always have to spend money to get the share of voice. When BMW bought Mini, this was something they did. This is an illegal, let me take a step back. How most people advertise outside. They buy what's called a 48 sheet piece of advertising. It's planned, up to 4 months to 6 months in advance. They buy it at a certain rate. When we were on Coke, we would spend anywhere between 7 and 15 million on media in Ireland. Someone like BMW would spend not dissimilar in perhaps the UK. And when they bought the Mini Cooper, which is a fresh, cool, edgy brand, they decided they wouldn't buy 48 sheet poster sites. They would hang illegal advertising around cities across Europe. So this is an example of something that's hung in New York. It's a piece of film. It's on the side of a building. It doesn't have planning permission, and it's illegal. So, they had the money to do something legal, but they decided to do something illegal. They wanted to appeal to their audience. They wanted to be fresh and interesting. One of the smartest things we can do is, even if you are in #1 in your market, get your team around the table and look at it from the other way and say, if we were entering the market, what would we do? And particularly people in professional services, it's really important because we get lazy. When you are leading the market, and I experienced this very, very much. I was kind of with Revive, we came to market very quickly. We did really well. Within 9 months we were trading $1 million. Within 12 months we were up to 1.5. But between 18 months we were turning the 2 million mark. 7, 8, 9 years later, we had 1,000% competition in the market, and we were a bit complacent. Whereas if we went back and looked at what we did to gain that business, we would have traded very differently in the last few years. I'll get this thing working yet. You need a plan. Back to the Samsung example. They planned that for 2 years. They fought to get the sponsorship of the Oscars. But one rule of the Oscars is you cannot have a brand in the actual event. You cannot state the brand on the screen. You cannot say it during the actual event. So so you're spending $30 million to be the primary sponsor, but you can't actually say it. So you've got to be clever. You've got to think like the insurgent, but you've got to plan it rigorously. So, I mean, I wouldn't like to be the marketing director trying to secure $30 million for a property that you can't actually say on TV. Would you? The other thing I would say is, and this is something, and I was speaking to Aidan the other day about this, an idea that he had on Horizon. Know when your idea is ready. Don't overbake the cake. Plan, 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 but know when to strike. Most companies, I think particularly when you work on the other side of the fence, when you work for yourself or you have a small company or you have a small company that grows bigger, you think that the bigger guys know when to strike. They know more than you do. But when you plan, and you plan to 75%, the Coca-Cola company have a term, and they say, just fucking do it. Excuse my language, but that's actually what they say. If you are 75%, you are good to go. Inside out, taking that example, the reason they feel they can only go to 75% and they're ready is because they know their team are 25%. They've got the systems, they've got the culture, they've got the value system that says whatever we do, we're going to do it really, really well. So if we've got to build a new display, we're going to build it immaculately. If we're going to pull it through the trade. And similarly, with a kind of a smaller organisation, we've got to say, if we're going to go into this market, we're going to put our best guys in. We're going to make sure they've got the tools. We're going to make sure they're on time. We're going to actually pull it right through, because you know what? The chances are we shouldn't be able to make this work, but we're going to make it work. And we'll make it work because we believe it can work. Now you, as the head of your organisation, many, many people in this room are the leaders. You're always there, and you're not there in another market. So how do you create that passion? And I would say culture training is the only way. You can call it what you like. I certainly think that ad we ran earlier for the American football team, I mean, that should be shown to every single one of our sales offices. If we can treat people with the respect, whether they are, the junior customer services caller, who's listening to moaning customer complaints, right through to the sales director. Everyone should have the same message. Be on message. Use your plan. Train your team. It's not going to be an accident if you're successful. Learn it. Take it marketing. Take it marketing is what we do take it marketing every day. So in other words, when you see an opportunity, don't think too long about it, jump. If your competitor screws up, be there with your team, be ready. Always know your competitors' weaknesses. So we often focus on what our competitors do better than us. Make a list. Now make a list of where you're better and wait. Wait for the weaknesses and then move in. So for example, if you know you can't win on margin, but you've got a really strong customer service team, play the customer service team hard in your tender process. And don't apologize for being more expensive. Because when the shit hits the fan, your team are going to pull it through. And I've seen that with a lot of companies. I'm working with a few service industry companies at the minute, and it's something they're apologizing always about charging a little bit more. Don't apologize for charging more if you can prove why you're more expensive. One of the things, I'm sorry, I'm running out of time, but I'm almost there. One of the things we did, I worked with J&J years ago, and one of the things they did very well, they had a very traditional sales team. The team stayed with them. They paid a little bit more than most people. They trained them well. They gave them a decent car. They gave them good holidays, and they gave them staff sales of all their products. So people kind of stayed with them. Procter & Gamble entered the market here very aggressively in the 90s through an agent. They didn't actually set up their own office. And when the supermarkets, which is where most of the fast-moving consumer goods actually are sold, sold through were presented to the buyers, P&G came in with a higher margin for most of J&J's competitive brands. So it was death for J&J. In Europe, in many markets, they were wiped out by 25 share points within 2 years. Ireland, it didn't happen. Why? P&G set up a sales office, I said, in Ireland, but they didn't put their own team on the ground. They used agents. J&J had a fantastic sales relationship with their buyers. And when P&G screwed up, one of the sales managers said, we get gondola ends in Halloween. When they screw up, because they will, their deliveries won't arrive, we're going to be ready, because whoever gets the space for Halloween gets the space for Christmas. That's just the way the retail world works. So we'll be ready. So they prepared double stock for those ends, knowing that P&G weren't going to deliver. They went to 3 store managers, they told them the plan. They said, okay, if they don't show up, we'll give you the space. Sure enough, they got the space. It was the highest market share they got that year. That was 1997. By 1999, they were still holding more than 40% share points. If you look at anywhere else in Europe, it was about 20. So the power of your relationships on the ground, and that was just one really smart sales manager in Dublin who got it that the distribution centre couldn't cope with the delivery date, but that the retail chains could not survive if they didn't have the sales line filled. So that's Take It marketing. I'm going to end with an ad. It's actually Adidas ad, and I mean, I've captured here the checklist, but I'm conscious of being over time. Maybe you want to go, bring your team, plan, plan, plan. We've seen a lot of really positive examples of technology and how it can make a difference. Do not underestimate the power of the plan. Technology can help, online marketing can help, but the plan is the plan, and if online's part of it, use it, but only use it if it's relevant. As I say, back to my theme, which is lightweight boxer, we do fall down. We fall down all the time. Irish people are quite good at dusting themselves off and picking ourselves up and going back into battle. And maybe we will win some of them and maybe we'll lose some of them, but we're going to live and fight another day. Thanks very much.